Honorable the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, Mrs. Glenda Jennings-Smith, MP, Member for Toko Sandy Grande, and Mr. Prakash Ramada, MP, Member for St. Augustine, have requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the members seek is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions. Petition lodged by the member for Laventille West on behalf of the Chief State Solicitor requesting the use of the Hansard in court proceedings.
Member for Laventille West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to present a petition on behalf of Kadeen Matthew, Attorney at Law for the Chief State Solicitor of Trinidad and Tobago of number 23 to 27 St. Vincent Street, Port of Spain. I move that the clerk be allowed to read this said petition.
Honourable members, is this agreed? Aye. Clerk, please proceed.
Your petitioner is the Attorney at Law on record for the Honourable Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, hereinafter called the respondent in the High Court action number 2726 of 2018, which matter concerns an application by Diane Jimley Hadid, hereafter called the applicant, who is seeking inter alia a declaration that Section 15(1)(a) of the Legal Profession Act, Chapter 9003 of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago contravenes, is inconsistent with, infringes, and or abrogates the constitutional rights of the applicant enshrined in Sections 4A, B, and D of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, to the extent that Section 15(1)(a) applies to and confers a benefit to nationals of Trinidad and Tobago only, and has the effect of depriving the applicant, by reason of her origin, of the rights enshrined in Sections 4A, B, and D, and accordingly is null, void, and of no effect. An affidavit sworn to on 25th July 2018 and filed on 26th July 2018 by the applicant, hereinafter referred to as the said affidavit, stated that the applicant is desirous of being admitted to practice and enroll as an attorney at law of the Supreme Court of Judicature of Trinidad and Tobago, and has taken all the required steps towards being admitted to practice pursuant to Section 15(1)(a) of the Legal Profession Act, Chapter 9003. However, her application has been denied solely on the basis of her nationality. The applicant deposed that she was a holder of a Grenadian birth certificate, St. Lucian citizenship, and a St. Lucian passport, and on 7th April 2017, she was granted a certificate of recognition of Caribbean Community Skills Qualification by the Government of Trinidad and Tobago. On 1st December 2017, the applicant completed a 6-month attachment at Montano and Company. The applicant further deposed that on 29th March 2018 and 10th April 2018, the Registrar of the Supreme Court of Judicature of Trinidad and Tobago, hereinafter called the Register, stated that the applicant was ineligible to be admitted to practice law pursuant to Section 15(1)(a) of the Legal Profession Act, Chapter 9003, unless she shows proof of Trinidad and Tobago nationality. The applicant stated by letter dated 13th April 2018, the LAT informed her that her application did not meet the qualifications for a certificate of fitness, as she was not a national of Trinidad and Tobago. The applicant deposed that she has been advised by counsel and verily believes that she should not be subjected to any restriction on her right to engage in any gainful employment or occupation that does not apply to Trinidad and Tobago nationals, and the effect of Section 15(1)(a) is to impose a restriction on gainful employment solely on the basis of nationality. By order dated 4th December 2018, the Honorable Mr. Justice Kokaram granted permission to the defendant to file affidavits in response on or before 31st January 2019. The Hansard report of the proceedings of the House of Representatives for the 2nd October 2000 should be produced and referred to at the hearing of the constitutional motion before the High Court to indicate what took place in the House of Representatives on the said date in relation to the passing of the Legal Profession Amendment Act 2000, Act number 76 of 2000. The Clerk of the House or other such officer responsible for the making of the Hansard report or proceedings in the House of Representatives should swear to an affidavit referring to and exhibiting the said notes of the proceedings or extracts thereof, and attesting that they are the true record of what was said in the House of Representatives on the said date. The petitioner therefore humbly prays that the House of Representatives do grant leave for the Clerk of the House or such other officer to swear to an affidavit referring to and exhibiting the said Hansard report to attend the hearing before the Honorable Judge if required. And your petitioner in duty bound will ever pray. Dated the 16th day of January 2019 for the Chief State Solicitor.
Honorable members, the question is that the petitioner be granted leave to proceed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leave is granted.
Papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Number 1, the audited report and audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Heritage and Stabilization Fund for the financial year ended September 30th, 2018. And 7, the annual report of the Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended September 30th, 2018. I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 2, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Planning and Development to the 8th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on an examination of the perceived inequality faced by single fathers in Trinidad and Tobago, with specific focus on custody matters, policies, and access to programs and services. Paper number 3, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Public Administration to the 11th report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on an examination of the administration and expenditure of the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications. Paper number 4, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Education to the 6th report of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration on an inquiry into mental health and wellness services and facilities in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
The Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers: the Land Acquisition Requisition Order 2018 and the Criminal Procedure Plea Discussion and Plea Agreement Amendment to Schedule Order 2018.
Reports from committees.
Papers. Minister of Finance laid paper 7 already. Yes? Okay.
Reports from committees.
Member for Faizabad.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the 16th report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on an examination into the implementation of the Public Sector Investment Program.
Prime Minister's questions. Urgent questions.
Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question 1 to the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. In light of a statement issued by the President of the United States on January 23, 2019, declaring that the U.S. recognizes Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela and calling on governments in the Western Hemisphere to reject Nicolas Maduro's presidency as illegitimate and undemocratic, could the Minister indicate what is Trinidad and Tobago's response to this position adopted by the President of the United States?
Madam Speaker, this is a question directed at the government of Trinidad and Tobago's position in protection of the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And the answer to this question is as follows. And I would like my colleagues and the national community to pay very close attention. In response to that call from the United States made through its president, who speaks for the United States and not for Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago's response has been to immediately support and participate in an emergency meeting of CARICOM, which took place last night, seeking consensus from the CARICOM in response to this statement. The end result of that statement is that the end result of that meeting is that Trinidad and Tobago is a full participant, which signed on to the CARICOM statement issued last night, where we reaffirm our country's position and CARICOM's position on the principles of acknowledgement of sovereignty of nations, and of course the inviolable condition of a nation as mentioned in the relevant article of the OAS and the United Nations, and as such we reaffirm our position of non-intervention and non-interference in the affairs of neighboring states. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary question, Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Prime Minister, in light of the response that he's provided, would the Honourable Prime Minister not agree that the government of Trinidad and Tobago put the cart before the horse? Or the horse before the cart? Sorry?
Member, please ask the question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The cart before the horse. I know this is an upside-down government. They had their...
Member.
Madam, I will proceed.
Member.
Madam, I will proceed.
You have 15 seconds to ask the question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Prime Minister, would the Honourable Prime Minister not agree that the government has put the cart before the horse, in that they went out there, announced their position that they are in support, and they recognize President Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela, and then sought CARICOM's concurrence on the matter?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I do not agree because no such thing happened. We did not have to agree or to take sides. Madam Speaker, the government of Venezuela has been there, and Trinidad and Tobago has been treating with the government in Venezuela as in every other government around the world, and there was no requirement, Madam Speaker, for us to indicate which side we were on.
Supplementary, Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Prime Minister, in light of the mass protests in Venezuela since the U.S. President made his pronouncement, and the anticipation by several local organizations and individuals of a mass influx of persons fleeing Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago, does the Prime Minister still stand by the notion that there is no migration crisis, despite admitting over 40,000 Venezuelans fled Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago?
I'm not going to allow that as a supplemental question, having regard to what was asked. Member for Napa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate the possible consequences to Trinidad and Tobago as a result of the stance taken by this government on Venezuela, which is at variance with that of our three largest trading partners?
Madam Speaker, we are very clear as to what consequences can flow to Trinidad and Tobago, because Trinidad and Tobago in this matter is being and will continue to be recognized as a country run by common sense and the rule of law, and that we maintain our position to be able to speak as a nation on its own with no prompting from others with respect to any and all incidents surrounding us in our capacity as an independent nation. What we are concerned about, Madam Speaker, is a representative going in New York and meeting with Marine Le Pen, a notable racist, and being the only country to have sat and had lunch with her and disgrace our country. Madam Speaker, that we are concerned about.
Member for Princestown, please practice some temperance. It's too early. Member for Fyzabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Health, could the Minister confirm reports of a baby being born in a car after being taken away from a public health facility?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, very often things that make it into the public domain about health, as ministers, regardless of political persuasion, we are often constrained because we can't give out patient information, and we have to take the licks for it. Let me put the following facts on the table. The mother of this child previously had 2 home deliveries and 1 hospital delivery. She turned up at the health center at 3:15 and was examined by a district health visitor, a qualified midwife, and a doctor. At no time was she turned away. Let me put that on the record. And that is what we have to face with as ministers of health. She was advised, and I can't give out the information, based on her dilation, based on the condition of her cervix. It was the express opinion of an experienced midwife and a doctor that she had more than adequate time to reach a hospital for a safe delivery. She left the facility at 4:15 and turned up at San Fernando at 6:15. I asked the question, this is a case of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Suppose we had kept her in the health center and she had a difficult delivery. There was postpartum hemorrhage, shoulder dystocia, cord prolapse, placenta abruption, and she and the baby died. You know what will be the question being posed to me? Why did we keep her in the health center? So this is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you keep bringing people's private health business into the parliament.
The UNC does that.
Member for Fyzabad, I will share with you her intimate details. Thank you.
Supplemental member for Fyzabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, in view of the circumstances, would you consider implementing the protocol where, in such circumstances, the patient is kept at the district health facility pending the arrival of an ambulance to transport the patient to the hospital?
Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, those protocols already exist. There's an intra-regional, because she had transport.
Member, please answer the question.
She had transport. She came with her own transport. She agreed to go to the hospital with her own transport at 4:15. Doesn't it make more sense for her to use her transport than wait for an ambulance to come from San Fernando General Hospital? Again, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Thank you very much, Madam.
Member for Oropouche West.
Madam Speaker, to the Minister of National Security, with regard to a video circulated on social media this week depicting prisoners complaining about their meals, could the Minister indicate whether the cell phone jammers, as well as other contraband prevention apparatus at the prisons, are functional?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the short answer is yes. As has been seen in the media within the last, I would say, 2 months, there has actually been an increase in the security apparatus at the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service. And we see, unfortunately, on a weekly basis, sometimes more than once, twice a week, that we have prevented contraband from getting into the prisons. There has been an increase in the use of technology, the use of dogs at the prison gates and doing searches throughout the prisons. Unfortunately, there has been a decrease in the amount of contraband that actually makes it to the prisoners, so that demand and supply is being effectively shut down in the prisons.
Minister of National Security, are you saying that there was a lapse in security then?
Minister of National Security.
That is not what I said. I said there's been a marked improvement.
Member for Oropouche West.
To the Minister of Health, with regard to reports indicating that a patient spent 2 days on a trolley because of the unavailability of beds, could the minister indicate whether these reports are true?
Thank you. Madam Speaker, this is just like the previous question, a report that somebody was turned away from a health facility. This question doesn't tell me which hospital, it doesn't tell me the name of the patient, it doesn't tell me the date of admission, the time of admission. It says a patient spent on a trolley where? San Fernando, Port of Spain, Princestown facility, Cora, Sangre Grande. On what date, on what person, what name? If you give me those specifics, I will surely answer your question. Thank you very much.
Minister, it's San Fernando General Hospital, and it's Mrs. Girwa.
And I am supposed to now know, I am now know what magic am I supposed to perform now? I am supposed to go and get Mrs. Girwa's medical reports and do like the UNC again, come to the Parliament and call out people's medical business. Is that what this Parliament is going to be used for from now going forward?
Not us. We wouldn't do that.
I'm supposed to find out now because the member posed a vague, unintelligent question, and I am now supposed to talk off the cuff about the medical status of Mrs. Girwa. How unreasonable can we get? And once again, in both chambers of this Parliament, the UNC is asking me as minister to put on record people's personal health matters, and I will not do so.
Member for Couva South, this is a supplemental question.
Yes, madam. Madam Speaker, is the minister aware that a 79-year-old lady from Windsor Park, the constituency of Couva South, was unable to access a bed for more than 3 days at the San Fernando General Hospital?
Not going to allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Oropouche West.
To the Attorney General, with regard to reports indicating that the use of authorization letters by family members to apply for birth certificates on behalf of relatives has now been stopped, could the minister indicate what alternative arrangements have been implemented to assist citizens who are physically incapable of applying for same?
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. I'm pleased to advise that the revised guidelines with respect to birth certificate applications do in fact take into account consideration for persons who are both physically or mentally challenged and unable to attend our offices due to these circumstances. I'm able to say that the Registrar General has confirmed that these persons will be required to submit a letter of authorization to the applicant, together with 2 forms of identification and a utility bill. The applicant will also be required to produce 2 forms of identification, a utility bill and a letter indicating the physical challenge which is impeding the owner of the record from attending the office in his or her own behalf. The revised guidelines with respect to authorization are in respect of birth certificates with PIN numbers only. Persons can apply for short-term certificates, that is those without PIN numbers, without authorization. The revised guidelines are in keeping with the international best practice, and the request for provision of 2 forms of ID are consistent with identification requirements of other government offices, and financial institutions throughout the country. Trinidad and Tobago nationals living abroad can apply through TNT consulates at the Registrar General's Department, and there's an electronic link to these consulates, and certificates are mailed from the Registrar General to consulates within a week of the application being lodged.
Supplemental member for Vancouver South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister advise that this new process of issuing or requesting authorization that has anything to do with altering of birth certificates, and if indeed this is so, how many birth certificates have been altered?
Madam Speaker, I want to put this clearly into the public domain. The information at the Registrar General's office in the hands of the TTPS are that no birth certificates have been altered at all. The issue which has come into the public domain surrounding persons alleged to have been involved in altering the applicant for birth certificates. So somebody goes and applies for a birth certificate, that application is done. One matter has come to our attention that is currently in the hands of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service as to the alteration of the applicant's name. For the sake of clarity, not any birth certificate information, none of it has been altered as far as we are aware. And yes, we are constantly improving this. I must add that we are very close to electronic payments for all services at the Registrar General's office. And very shortly, persons will be able to apply online, providing their IDs, paying online, and we'll simply mail these services out. That's going to apply across the board as we continue to increase the security arrangements around every aspect of the Registrar General, which was made very important because the UNC allowed the licenses to lapse. And when those licenses lapsed, we were left in a lurch, Madam Speaker, and we have since recovered that position, and we're about to move it very far forward in the right direction.
Honourable members, the time allotted for urgent questions is now spent. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 7 questions on the order paper for answer. We will be answering, we were asking for a deferral of 2, and those are questions 33 and 47. We're asking for a 2-week deferral, Madam Speaker.
Leader of the House, just by way of clarification. Yes, ma'am. Question 33 doesn't qualify for today.
We had asked for deferral previously, but I'm just making sure because it's on the order paper.
Okay, all right.
Because we had asked for the deferral, but I've seen it appear, so I just want to make sure that we get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Member for Naparima.
So you can handle it, please. Question 43 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as has been said clearly in the public domain by myself, including up to yesterday at post-cabinet press conference, I have requested that the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs make a request of his equivalent, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Venezuela, to have a meeting with the Minister of National Security equivalent in Venezuela and myself, the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs and the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Venezuela, for us to have discussions, amongst other things, on proper border security and how they may be able to assist in making their borders more secure.
Supplemental member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does the Minister of National Security, do you not think that it is too late in the day, after 3 years, to now be meeting with the ministerial equivalent in Venezuela to discuss a problem that has been with us for some considerable period of time?
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, despite the screaming from the other side. The answer is meetings have been taking place. The former Minister of National Security, the Member of Parliament for Point Fortin, has had more than one, in fact more than 2 meetings with the equivalent Minister of National Security during his tenure, and it is now for me to continue those meetings.
Supplemental.
If, as the minister says, there were a number of meetings, would the minister enlighten us to some of the outcomes of those meetings that have been beneficial in dealing with the situation at our entry ports?
Madam Speaker, I cannot get into the particulars of what was decided between them, but I can say, for example, they restarted the exercises between the Venezuelan Navy and the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard in doing patrols. What's this? Exercise Ventry. That was restarted because, of course, it had gone dormant, and the country can ask the question why those on the other side did not want to protect our borders and allow them to be porous between 2010 and 2015.
Supplemental member for Naparima.
If these protocols were in place, as the minister has indicated, why did this not prevent the alleged taking over of 3 or 4 fishermen last year by the Guardia Nacional?
Remember, you know, it might be just your question style. Some of it appears argumentative, so that, you know, if we could leave that out and just start with your question. Okay? Minister of National Security.
Ma'am, would he repeat the question? It was sort of frantic, and I couldn't pick up exactly what he said.
Member for Naparima. Supplemental 3.
Minister indicate why these protocols were not operative when 3 of our local fishermen were allegedly adopted by the Venezuelan authorities in our coastal waters.
Minister of National Security.
As was rightly said by the member for Naparima, allegedly, he does not know the circumstances within which these persons were picked up by the Guardia Nacional. I am certain he does not have their GPS location to identify on whose territorial sea borders they were, etc.
Is the minister telling the nation that the fishermen were caught in Venezuelan waters?
Member, I would not allow that question. Member for Naparima.
Question number 46 to the Minister of Planning and Development.
Minister of Planning and Development.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a national building code addresses national requirements for the design and construction of all types of buildings, regardless of size and complexity, and could be used to design structures ranging from small single-story buildings to multi-stories. Due to its complexity, however, such a code is intended for use by design professionals, primarily architects, structural engineers, and others who are involved in designing and constructing what is referred to as engineered structures. By this definition, this country has never had a national building code, and as such, there are no existing national building codes currently to revise. It should be noted that there have been attempts over the years to formulate national building requirements of some kind. Unfortunately, regarding the completion of a comprehensive set of requirements, these attempts have been largely unsuccessful, only yielding small pockets of measurable progress that were built on in subsequent attempts. The last such attempt occurred in 2011 under the supervision of the then Ministry of Housing and the Environment and steered by a cabinet-appointed interagency committee. However, this process quickly broke down with very little progress being made due to conflict within the steering committee and a lack of decisive leadership. Overall, it is estimated that the technical work completed through all these historical attempts in their entirety is as follows: structural 7%, mechanical 44%, small building 50%, occupancy, fire, safety 20%. The Ministry of Planning and Development is currently strategizing closely with the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards and other relevant stakeholders to ensure that the process is done right on this occasion. The Ministry of Planning and Development is in the process of establishing a new steering committee, and this committee will go beyond a mandate of strictly code formulation, but will also deliver recommendations to ensure that there is a regulatory, institutional, and administrative framework capable of supporting the effective enforcement of a national building code and a small building code. The National Building Code is normally supplemented by a code of practice for or a guide to the design and construction of small buildings, usually for residential use. Such a code contains simplified requirements, since small, non-complex buildings will not normally require the sophisticated analysis and design considerations that are necessary for larger, more complex structures. In this regard, Trinidad and Tobago utilizes an analogous mechanism, that is the TTS 599/2006, more commonly referred to as a small building guide. Currently, in dealing with the approval of plans for simple buildings up to 2 stories, building inspectors in the regional corporations, supplemented by their technical knowledge, training, and experience, make considerable use of the small building guide in assessing building plans for approval, in spite of the fact that this document has never been officially adopted. It must be stressed, however, that the small building guide in its current form is not a code in all of its rigor. As for more complex multi-story structures, the long-standing practice that currently obtains has been for the corporations to refer these buildings and their plans to the Designs Branch, Construction Division of the Ministry of Works and Transport for assessment. Although there exists no formal national building code in Trinidad and Tobago at present to refer to, the Designs Branch Construction Division of the Ministry of Works and Transport, which consists of a cadre of professionally trained engineers, periodically issues a list of certain design codes and standards to be followed. These are normally codes and...
Time is now
Thank
spent.
you, ma'am.
Might I just ask all members to ensure that their devices are on silent, please? Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 34 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in response to Part A of the question, the measurement of progress of the project by percentage is not, in our opinion, an appropriate indicator. Notwithstanding, I wish to report that to date, a heads of agreement was executed on the 5th of December 2016, and a term sheet was signed on the 25th of August 2018. These both documents have been executed, and other elements of the projects are in train with a completion time frame of between 12 to 18 months. The last major document to be signed is the gas sales agreement. First gas is projected for 2021.
For Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Energy, I just heard you said the first gas is projected for 2021, but yesterday I read in newspapers that the CEO of NGC had said, predicted the first quarter of 2020. So I'm a little bit confused of what is the...
But that's a statement. What is the question?
So the question is, who is the, well, first of all, the CEO of NGC, is there any the difference between your stated date of the first gas and the NGC CEO.
Member, again, you just said, again is a statement. What is the question?
Okay, the question is, could the minister explain the statement by the NGC CEO of the first quarter of 2020 will be the first delivery of the Dragon gas, field gas to Trinidad and Tobago, based on his answer just a few minutes ago.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industry.
Madam Speaker, I did not hear or personally was there when the minister, the CEO of NGC made that statement, but I speak now as the Minister of Energy and Energy. And somebody who has a synopsis of the entire project, I am telling this Parliament on behalf of the government that we expect first gas in 2021.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, Honourable Minister, you indicated that you have a synopsis of the whole project. Are you aware that Shell has indicated that they will not invest a cent until they get the permission of the members of the National Assembly?
Member for Oropuch East.
Minister of Energy, have taken note of your answer earlier that you have completed, I think, an agreement between the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the former President of Venezuela, Mr. Maduro. Could I ask, and the term sheet you made reference to, could you indicate when or if there's a legally binding contract between the government of Trinidad and Tobago, NGC, and the government of Venezuela and or any other entity in Venezuela? Is there a legally binding contract available now upon which you can claim that gas would come whether in 2020, 21, 22, 23, or 24?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industry.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member for Oropuch East, I understand, had a law degree recently.
That was not the question.
A heads of agreement was signed between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Venezuela. It wasn't signed between Prime Minister Rowley and President Maduro. Prime Minister Rowley signed on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and so did President Maduro. That is a heads of agreement, because it's a cross-border project. The individuals, companies couldn't sign commercial arrangement without being covered by a heads of agreement. And a term sheet is not a binding contract. The binding contract will be the gas sales agreement when it is executed in the coming months.
Supplemental member for Oropuch East.
Could the Minister of Energy, with or without a law degree, tell this country whether there's a legally binding contract for gas? Is there one or not? A heads of government is not a legally binding arrangement. And when was that signed? Member, tell us what document you are going to court with.
Minister of Energy and Energy. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. I believe that question was asked already and answered. Member for Point-a-Pier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question 35 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, but Madam Speaker, before there's a slight typo in the question, and I would just say instead of the word actual expenditure should be budgeted at the beginning of the question.
Okay. Well, you see, remember, the difficulty with it is this, that this changes the question. It's not just a typo.
No,
this is not just a typo. This changes the question, so that the member has to answer what is asked. Maybe in a supplemental, he might ask something else. But this is the question. It's not a typo.
Well,
Minister of Energy and Energy Industry.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in response to Part A, the breakdown of actual expenditure on renewable energy and energy efficiencies for fiscal 2017 is listed in a detailed table here, which I would circulate to the Parliament. The entire sum spent was $429,400 In response to Part B, pursuant to government's target of 10% renewable power generation by 2022, two major vehicles which are being promoted are in the early stages of implementation, and they are a waste-to-energy project and two, a utility-scale renewable energy power generation project. With regards to waste-to-energy facility, waste-to-energy is the conversion of waste, more so municipal solid waste, into useful forms of energy, including heat and electricity. Expression of interest were invited, and 28 organizations responded. An RFP has been prepared, and all 28 respondents to the expression of interest did in fact pre-qualify, and they have been invited to submit proposals on the RFP. The deadline for the submission of proposals for that is May 31st, 2019. With regard to utility-scale renewable energy power generation, in December of 2017, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries invited expression of interest for the development of utility-scale renewable power generation, 3 megawatts and greater. The developers would act as independent power producers, IPPs, through Build, Own, Operate scheme for grid-tied power generation. The ministry received submissions from 55 organizations, including major international organizations, ranging from solar PVs, wind, waste energy, hydro, geothermal, and solar thermal. The submission was reviewed by an interagency committee comprising of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, TNTEC, the Ministry of Public Utilities, the RIC, EMA, and Ministry of Local Government. Arising from the evaluation, 37 organizations were shortlisted. An RFP was prepared by the interagency committee and issued to the 37 organizations that were shortlisted. The deadline for submission of these proposals is February 26, 2019. Just a month away.
Member for Pointe-à-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 36 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in response, in fiscal 2017, several extractive industry transparency initiatives were undertaken. These comprise the following. 1, development of strategic plan with the aim to promote effective natural resource management in Trinidad and Tobago. 2, development of civil society strategy to improve civil society and public awareness and understanding of EITI and EITI reports. The conduct of a baseline assessment to assess public perception and knowledge of the EITI and key extractive sector. 4, EITI peer partnership initiatives in which TTEITI Steering Committee provided technical support to CARICOM neighbors, Guyana and Suriname, on effective natural resource management and in their proposal to join the EITI, which were both achieved in 2017. And 5, dissemination of TTEITI summary reports for 2016 and 2017. These reports were distributed to stakeholders, including residents of fence-line communities, parliamentarians, industry representatives, civil society organizations. They provided a description of the operations of the oil and gas sector and outlined the benefits to be derived by citizens from the extractive sector resources. And Madam Speaker, let me just point out that in both the 2016 and 2017 report, where all the oil companies submit independent reports to the EITI, independent of the state, there was no mismatch in the numbers, which means that there was 100% compliance as it relates to taxes in the oil and gas sector. And in response to B, a breakdown of the total spend of $438,894.94 by the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative for fiscal 2017 is listed on a table here, which I will circulate. The sum total is $438,894.94.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have been authorized by the Cabinet to issue the following statement. Madam Speaker, as you and the honorable members of this House might recall, Trinidad and Tobago responded to an invitation from our partners of the OAS, the Organization of American States, to the 8th Summit of the Americas in Lima, Peru, during the period April 13th and 14th, 2018. Madam Speaker, I had the honor to represent Trinidad and Tobago at that summit, along with my cabinet colleague, Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. Madam Speaker, it may also be recalled that the Cabinet, by minute number 1931, dated November the 8th, 2018, considered the report of the 8th Summit of the Americas of the Trinidad and Tobago delegation and noted inter alia that the main outcome of the summit was the Lima Commitment, so-called, on democratic governance against corruption, which consisted of a series of commitments agreed to by the heads of state and governments in the following areas. 1, the reinforcement of democratic values. 2, transparency, access to information, protection of whistleblowers and human rights, including freedom of expression. 3, the financing of political organizations and elections campaigns. 4, the prevention of corruption in public works and public procurement and contracting. 5, international legal cooperation, the fight against bribery, international corruption, organized crime and money laundering, and asset recovery. And 6, the strengthening of inter-American anti-corruption mechanisms. Madam Speaker, in consequence of these deliberations, the Cabinet further required the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs to submit specific information on the following. 1, the status of the relevant legislation that would support the Lima Commitment. For example, whistleblower legislation, financing of political organizations and campaign financing legislation. And 2, Cabinet as well requested information as to the time frame for the above-mentioned legislation to take effect in Trinidad and Tobago. In this regard, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to inform this Honorable House that in respect of whistleblower protection, the Whistleblower Protection Bill 2018 is on the order paper of this House for debate. In respect of financing of political organizations and campaign financing legislation, this is being finalized as we speak, following further consultation with international agencies in search of best practices. In respect of the prevention of corruption in public works and public procurement and contracting, in accordance with the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, Act number 1 of 2015, the procurement regulator has been appointed and his work has begun. The procurement board, which the regulator chairs, was also appointed on January the 12th, 2018. In respect of international cooperation, organized crime, money laundering and asset recovery, the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016 is currently before a joint select committee of this Parliament. The Companies Amendment Bill 2018 is on the order paper for debate. The Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018 was passed in the House of Representatives on November the 30th, 2018, and in the Senate on December the 4th, 2018. This bill was assented to on December the 11th, 2018, and now stands proudly as the Income Tax Amendment Act, Act number 18 of 2018. Both the Mutual Assistance, Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill and the Tax Information Exchange Agreements Bill 2018 are now before a joint select committee of this Parliament. Following our interface at the 11th meeting of the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes, held in Punta del Este, Uruguay, during the period November the 20th to the 22nd, 2018, we are now in a position of readiness to advance this very important work, Madam Speaker. The following bills are expected to be introduced during the current term of this Parliament. 1. Civil Asset Recovery Management and Unexplained Wealth Bill 2018, the Miscellaneous Provisions, Registration of Deeds, Conveyancing, and Law of Property and Stamp Duty Bill 2018, the Non-Profit Organizations Bill 2018, and the Real Estate Agents Bill 2018. Madam Speaker, the government shares wholeheartedly the philosophy of the Lima Commitment, and as you can see from this record, Madam Speaker, we are proceeding apace. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Superior.
Standing Order 24-4, Madam Speaker, thank you. Question to the Honourable Minister. Given that you're in your 4th year in office, can you say when the procurement legislation will be actually proclaimed and fully implemented?
Madam Speaker, unlike the previous administration, when we asked Her Excellency to proclaim legislation, that is when...
So stay quiet.
I'm obliged. Madam Speaker, I give way to the Minister for that.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As the Minister responsible for the public procurement, as the Minister responsible for the Public Procurement Act, in the budget statement of 2019, it was said, barring unforeseen circumstances, the Act could be fully operational by the end of the first quarter of calendar 2019. That timetable remains intact. Exactly.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, private members' business, motions.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, standing in my name. Be it resolved that this House consider the details of the two-part address by the Honourable Keith Rowley, MP, Prime Minister, termed Mind Your Business, reporting to the nation, which aired on January 6, 2019 and January 7, 2019. I thank you, Madam, for giving me this opportunity to raise and pilot this motion here today. And it comes at a time when Trinidad and Tobago is in a very difficult position, very challenging times. Indeed, some of the most challenging times in our history. We have reached a point where, due to the government's lack of vision, due to the government's incompetence, due to the government's no plan, we have reached where thousands are now unemployed and more being let go each day. We have reached to the second deadliest year in our history with respect to murders last year, recording at 516. Our economy is stagnant. Our healthcare and education systems are in disarray. And therefore, in these circumstances, more than ever now, I think our nation requires clear and decisive leadership, outlining solutions to the challenges we face. Instead, what we got in this broadcast was a two-part mini-series run over 2 days, and that is what has brought us here today, resulted in us filing this motion for debate. In some ways, I would like to see today, January 25th, as an historic day, January 25th, 2019, as an historic day. And by the way, Madam Speaker, yesterday was an historic day for us in the UNC. It marked my 9th anniversary being elected as the leader of my party. But today I have the honor, Madam Speaker, to say that we've been able to bring the government to the House for debate. Maybe, and as we shall see later, may they come kicking and screaming to debate their report entitled Mind Your Business. It's the first time in my memory, maybe possibly in the Commonwealth history, that an opposition has brought a government to Parliament to force them to expose their agenda and to place their report card for public scrutiny by elected representatives. Indeed, rather than summon the courage to come to Parliament, to lay the government's report, the Prime Minister chose to address an unknown audience at an unknown location, at an unknown time, and not, for what we now know, at an unknown cost. Everything, in my respect of you, or most of it, was wrong with this two-day report. Not just the fundamentals of grammar and so on, but fundamental inaccuracies, misrepresentations, and outright contempt for the truth. Madam Speaker, that broadcast, I'm sorry I missed it. I'm sorry I missed it.
Thank God.
Because I couldn't really sit down for 2 hours.
If you read it, it takes courage.
I would like to caution all members about the very loud outburst. Member Fisher.
So while it was being broadcast, it was already not a live broadcast. It was a delayed broadcast. I could not really sit there for 1 hour and then 2 hours to watch this. I think many people found that difficult. So what I did is I replayed it. It was up there in a crowd, wherever it may be, and I replayed it and listened very carefully. And you know, it reminded me of a story that Dr. Hamza Rafiq, some of you may remember him, he was a member of this House, a story he had told me many years ago. And he said he and Dr. Khan and so on, they were up at St. Anne's, and they were assessing patients to determine whether they should be allowed to leave the institution or to stay. So the first patient comes forward, and they said, look, just answer this very simple question. 3 and 3. Guy says, the patient says, very simple, very, very simple. Blue. The doctor said, well, no, I'm very sorry, you know, this is, take him back inside. Patient 2 comes up, 3 and 3. Guy is very eager and excited. He says, square. Doctor says, well, so sorry, you have to go back. The third patient steps up now. Doctors are there. And they ask him 3 and 3. He says the answer is 6. Wow, brilliant. You look, you know, you're fine. You can go home. But wait, by the way, how did you arrive at that? 3 and 3 equals 6. He said, well, all I did, I took blue and I minus square, and I multiplied it by 3 and added 17. Madam Speaker, there are parts in this broadcast that reminds me of all 3 patients. All 3 patients. All 3 patients.
Well put it.
I told you I played the delayed broadcast repeatedly. I even caused a transcript to be done. So, Madam Speaker, please, my colleagues will have all the time in the world after. 53, Standing Order 53. Madam Speaker, this broadcast gave rise to some of the most legendary memes.
But for Siparia.
Madam Speaker, these broadcasts, the two-day miniseries, gave rise to some of the most legendary memes that were ever created on social media. And the general consensus was that, I mean, you saw the memes, Newsday, 11th of January carried the story, stories that made your memes. And the memes were basically the Honorable Prime Minister standing in front of a screen, blank screen. The Honorable Prime Minister standing in front of the screen, my face is on the screen. And there were several of those memes that the Newsday reported. I'm sure, Madam, you may have seen some of them. But what was also very clear from this broadcast, they show an incompetent, failed government in desperation panic mode, sensing they will lose the elections, and maybe on the advice of their handlers, they launched their re-election campaign at this stage. Madam, my respectful view again, this tedious and jumbled address was essentially the electoral campaign rhetoric of a hapless politician rather than the expected public accountability and articulated vision of a prime minister. Those undecided, Madam Speaker, as indeed many citizens, were flabbergasted by the Prime Minister's blatant politicking using taxpayers' money. Former head of the Public Service, Reginald Dumas, weighed in, and I quote, and I have the references here, but to save time, I can share it. He said, he termed it a political gathering, the PNM's political leader talking to his people rather than a country's prime minister addressing TNT. Newsday warned the prime minister of using state resources to campaign politically, asking, was it a party event? Several columnists weighed in. Dr. Bishu Raghunath said, clearly the event launched the PNM's campaign. A post by consultant Dennis Demin spoke of the name and tone of the address. Michael Harris, columnist, said, and I quote, this was no address to the nation, but a staged and carefully controlled election campaign event.
Correct.
Ralph Maraj noted, here was a political animal posturing as prime minister, immorally crossing the line between party and government, distorting the country's governance and pushing us deeper into Absurdistan. And all these commentators, Madam Speaker, many more, these are just some of them, these are not UNC people. They could laugh all they want.
Honorable members, again, I'm going to caution you all on Standing Order 53. If I have to rise again, then I will invoke other powers. Member for Superior.
Thank you. I will hardly label Reginald Dumas as a UNC person. And indeed, Madam Speaker, we do have a list of UNC persons. None of these people are on a UNC list or a UNC supporter. But all of their comments are confirmed when no other than the Honourable Minister of Finance himself said, obviously, it was the start of the PNM's election campaign. And then, after that, as if one night was not enough, the Prime Minister gave us a two-part diatribe, and he elevated a blame game to Olympic proportions. Who in the partnership he did not blame, he probably forgot to blame. They blame Kamla, blame UNC. Default mode is a knee-jerk reaction of those on the other side. And we wish them well, Madam Speaker, because in a pathetic way we understand that when you have no achievements to show, now in your fourth year, you blame the former government, you blame the media, you blame everybody under God's son that has a different view from yours. Instead of facing challenges, demanding accountability from his ministers, the Prime Minister prefers to govern in the rearview mirror, always looking backwards. I just want to use two quotations here on that kind of behavior Madam Speaker. There's a man, his name is Richard Levick. He's a CEO, Strategic Communications, Washington, who said, and I quote, if I may use my reference code, madam, when a CEO or an alleged leader spends more than a few moments blaming others, they are saying, I do not have the ability, the leadership, or the vision to take us where we need to go. And closer to home, a more notable gentleman had this to say about blaming others, and I quote, anytime a government resorts to blaming the opposition for its failure to deliver on their mandate and their responsibilities to the public, people, it is a clear sign that they have outlived their struggles. In his own words, the member of Dega Martin West in 2014. You know, what did we do when we took office? Nothing. What did we do? The Primer, in his customary manner, attacked my administration as one that engaged in wasteful spending and corrupt activity. And he's shouted it across the floor again. Without a shred of evidence, he made damning statements that only the honourable man can make. But what are the facts? When we came into office in 2010, Madam Speaker, the former regime, which included several of them, maybe about 6 of those on the other side, the former regime left us a gift of an economy in shambles, high unemployment rates. Correct. They gave us a gift of $25 billion in CLICO and HCU owing. They gave us a gift of $5 billion owing to contractors. Yeah. Their operatives, Jones, Sate, and Julian, left us with Petrotrin's bill, debt of $18 billion US. Did we cry, Madam Speaker? Did we roll over and die? Did we get up every Monday morning and Thursday evening, wringing our hands and blaming the whole world? No, we did not do that. We didn't moan and groan in that manner. Instead, Madam Speaker, I took a competent group of men and women, and we put our shoulders to the wheel, and we worked to stabilize the economy and then to get growth. We managed the affairs of our country for 5+ years, and we brought unparalleled development throughout the length of Britain. You can see that development, Madam Speaker. You can feel it, you can touch it. And my colleagues here will give you the details according to their portfolios. You can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, and you taste the benefits that accrued to the people. When we left office in 2015, we left them a gift. And the Prime Minister brought a slide of cash in the bank. In his own words, he admitted that we had left money in the bank. And far from draining the treasury, as they so falsely accuse us, showed very clearly we left them cash in the bank. Cash in the bank. We gifted this government with $112 billion TT in savings when we left government. And those savings were accrued in the Prime Minister's own graphs. We showed in the HSF. That was one of the things. And the other was left in foreign reserves. Foreign reserves. And we were able to do this despite the fact that we paid $4.5 billion TT dollars repayments on the Petrotrin debt, on the repayments on the principal and the interest because of the debt that was left. We didn't cry all over the world. We didn't get up 4 years later in government and look backwards in the rearview mirror. We continue to work. We continue to deliver. And you know what is amazing? When we demitted office, as I say, we gifted that government, this government, the highest levels of foreign reserves ever in history. US $10.46 billion, which is about TT $73.22 billion. We left our country with 11 months import cover. Where has that gone now? 7? About 7 or just over 7 months import cover. We left the HSF with TT $39.62 billion, bringing us to the grand total of savings from the Prime Minister's own graphs of $112 billion. We left a low debt to GDP ratio, Madam Speaker. About 45%. Also, that seems to move like the sunshine sometimes. Sometimes the minister says it's 43, sometimes 40, 45, and it keeps moving. But in that arena, what is it now? What is the debt to GDP ratio now under this government? It has gone to 60 and climbing, 60% of debt to GDP. And we left all of this. We left a Standard & Poor's and Moody's investment grade rating, a good rating. And we left all of this as a gift to the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But you know what has happened? They have squandered it all. All has been squandered. Because if you look at their own numbers, their own graphs the Prime Minister brought, we will see it there, that all of these have gone. So growth in the HSF is basically flatline. There's a flatline in growth. Instead of removing, increasing, they have put no money into the HSF, Madam Speaker. They have put no money. Instead, they withdrew. They withdrew from the HSF. Twice withdrawing from it. We were able to grow that HSF, and we were able to grow the foreign reserves, as I pointed out before. Further, when we were in office, we were able to have a very buoyant foreign direct investment of over, what is it, about TT, $4.6 billion, 14 to 15. Do you know what has happened under their watch in the last few years, madam? The reverse is happening. Instead of positive foreign direct investment, we now have negative outflows of capital flight of about $4.47 billion. 2017 is negative $2.86 billion. Nothing coming in. And this is not simply because the price of gas and oil fell. There must be a reason why there's no FDI coming into the country. I challenge the government to tell us, since they came into office, how much FDI? Questions were asked here all the time. And don't talk to us about the plant down in Labre, is it? That came under the Mitsubishi plant, under our watch. Our watch. Of normal time? All time, full time, thank you. Let's look at jobs then, again in the Prime Minister's own graphs and words. And I'm taking that blame. Because the Prime Minister said, 20 to 15, we were able to create, 41,000 jobs. 41,000 jobs. And you know what was his achievement and all of that? He said, well, okay, during my watch, we only lost 21,000 of those. No job creation. And in fact, it is more jobs lost because those numbers were only up to 2017. They do not include all the things happening at Petrotrid, all the service providers. Not at TSTT. Those numbers do not include 2018 job losses, so it's far more. And secondly, it was not, the numbers will show, and my colleagues will give details, it was more than the 41,000 jobs the minister mentioned. It was more like 55,000 new jobs created. But there's something I really would like to touch on in the limited time. I don't have 2 hours, but my colleagues, I'm sure, will be able to deal with more depth into these matters. There's something I must speak about, Madam Speaker. The government, the Prime Minister said that in his broadcast, he was going to talk about where they are, what they've done, and what they were going to do, or what they intended to do. Now, in the 5th month of their 4th year in office, there is nothing to show in terms of what has been done for people in this country. Very little to show what they are doing, but there have been repeated promises that never materialize. PNM, typical promises that never materialize. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I have called them in a sense, you know, in the season of Calypso and Carnival and so on. So I've called some of these projects that they say they will do as Collapso projects, Madam Speaker. Collapso. The Dragon collapsed, Collapso. And then here we are now. The Sanders collapsed. And then there is this Dragon Field, which is just a disaster waiting to happen, Madam Speaker. Several repressive governments are now lining up, Madam Speaker, to support the government in Venezuela. We warned, Mr. Speaker, of this reality some time ago. This government has been contented swaying in a Congo line. Swaying in a Congo line. And when we raise our voices on this matter, which will cost billions, the Prime Minister last week, Friday, told us at least $1 billion for a pipeline. When we raise our voices, the government spokesperson on all things under the sun accused us of treason. So we must not ask questions. We must not seek transparency and accountability from that government. Anyone who does that is what? Unpatriotic. Unpatriotic. Treason. Treason. So we're still quiet. We must be like the people in Venezuela. The crisis in Venezuela right on our doorstep. With a dictatorial government. Madam Speaker, we monitor today now. Not just the ground, you know. You now have to monitor the skies. There's a gathering storm in Venezuela with the buildup of military powers in Venezuela.
Correct.
With the Iran, Russia, talking about warships coming from Iran, talking about planes. All these things are reported. I have the sources for them, but I want to make the point. We have to watch the skies now because you have military aircraft out of Russia there. Iran is promising to send warships and so on. And so, on a stone's throw away, right on our doorstep, you have the isolation, continuing isolation of the Maduro government from the rest of the international and regional community. And indeed, we have something that the Minister of Energy is reported to have said there is no he don't know about any humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. We condemn, Madam Speaker, we condemn the human rights abuses on our doorstep. We condemn breaches of the rule of law on our doorstep.
Correct.
We condemn breaches of the democratic process right on our doorstep. You see, what is foreign policy? Your foreign policy must be guided by the values and principles that you hold there. That's how you make foreign policy. We don't make foreign policy by saying, you see me, I'm not getting in that. Non-intervention. Those days are long gone. This is a global, the world now lives in a global environment. Everything you touch now, everybody in the world is doing right away, if they so wish. All over the world, I'm speaking here, this thing has been beamed somewhere out in the stratosphere. The whole world is so interconnected, Madam Speaker. So this hands-off approach can no longer work. And if it is that we have value and principles for human rights, for democratic processes and so on, then we must make that our foreign policy, not the old concept of the non-aligned world and non-intervention. Not at all.
Standing Order 48-1, please. Yes, that's not in the report.
Okay, so, Honourable Member, I understand that you most probably build in a framework, but remember, it is a very specific matter that you've brought before us. So I'll ask you to please get back on track.
Madam Speaker, I'm saying the Honourable Prime Minister talked about this game changer, the Dragon deal, and this is a deal that will take us off, will get growth, and I'm explaining that it will not happen. It's a Calypso project again because of what is happening right here in our hemisphere. And so, you know, Madam Speaker, years ago, as a sitting Prime Minister of our great country, at the United Nations, I supported a United Nations security resolution that was
2014.
that was sponsored by
Standing Order 48-1.
President Barack Obama.
Point of order. I've looked through this report that we are debating. Nothing about Dragon Field in here, Madam.
Nothing about the Dragon Field. My God! My God! Didn't watch it.
Member for Baratarisano, I'm sure you'll get your opportunity to contribute to the debate. Please continue.
And I'm saying there were many who were fearful and said, no, we shouldn't support it. Many on the other side, they condemned me. When terrorism was such a, all over the world, we had terrorist attacks here through the coup in 1990. But they said, no, no, no. If we lift our head up, they'll shoot it off. So let's just stay quiet and do nothing. That is not the way to go if we want this Dragonfield project to bring the gas that we need and to bring the revenue. Today, Madam Speaker, I say very clearly, that we share the desire of the Venezuelan people for peace and democracy, for free and fair elections, because that is the only way we can get the revenue from a dragon field.
All right, so, member, again, I understand you're trying to build a context, but this is not about what is happening politically and socially in Venezuela. So if you could come back to,
Yes, I will.
I think we were talking about mind your business, reporting to the nation, the 2-year day. Please continue.
Well, it depends on whose transcript you have. He didn't watch it. That's
Please
what
continue,
happened.
ma'am.
Thank you, madam, so much. And so as I come to the end of this point, if we want this, the actions of the government may very well, especially within the last day where they clearly aligned with the Maduro government, may well see us kiss the dragon deal goodbye. May well see us kiss it goodbye. And so I say that we on this side are prepared to join with the Venezuelan people and the free world in recognizing Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela until fresh, free elections, fair elections can be held with international observers.
Yes.
That is our position. Because we want that gas, but we want it in a democratic country. So, Madam Speaker, this broadcast now, how should I have this? The broadcast, 15, good. Madam Speaker, I said the broadcast was, many untruths, distortions, misinformation. So with this blank report, 4th year in office, the Prime Minister engaged in mythomania, once again whining once more and distorted, untrue allegations. You know, we cannot believe a word they say. There's a man in our country now, you have to fact check everything. There's a man in Trinidad and Tobago now, he's a folk hero, Robert Amar. Yes. Because he showed the untruths that the Prime Minister was speaking. The Prime Minister tells us, first of all, that there was a fall in energy revenue. That is a fact, there was a fall. But everyone was flabbergasted when the Prime Minister said it fell from 17 billion, and this, his exact words, 2014 earnings from the energy sector, not taxes, from the energy sector, was $17 billion. By 16, it was $1 billion. Several commentators have put out, one Mala Dukaran, who is an economist, she said, here are the fiscal numbers according to Central Bank review. The PM suggested revenue from oil and gas dropped to $1 billion. They took office, not so according to the Central Bank. And in the Central Bank table shows that the revenue was $6.64 billion in 2016. So I don't know where the Prime Minister got this meager $1 billion. Maybe it's to try to explain away not delivering to the people. The Prime Minister then gave 3 reasons that affected the energy revenue. One was what Prime Minister termed concessions. These are, in fact, what are called capital allowances. These have been part of the fiscal landscape of Trinidad and Tobago since 1992 under the Income Tax Aid Industry Amendment Act. The Minister of Finance at the time this act was introduced here was none other than the same Mr. Wendell Motley, then Minister of Finance, Act 17 of 92. And so it has been the case since then that oil and gas companies have been writing off developmental works as against their profits, writing it off before tax as against their profits. What changed in 2014, which we did, was to accelerate the allowances. They are indeed allowances, they're not concessions, which existed in 1992. Accelerate the phasing of them. So before the passage of that 2014 law, you could do it over time. You could write it over several years. After we passed this law in 2014, you could do it faster. You could do it in 1 year. You could write it off in 1 year. There was a sunset clause, Madam Speaker, in that law. And the sunset clause, when that provision, that allowance, will expire in 2017, December. It's gone.
Serious?
It's gone. The sun is set on that.
Serious? But
what is interesting is Norman Christie of BP told this country that these incentives were a brilliant move by the then government, because it brought the energy companies in. It brought the energy companies in to invest. And that's where we got like Truck and Juniper and all these, Angelin, all these programs that, that we are reaping the benefits of today. That is where the uptick that the Minister of Finance speaks about in the energy sector, that's where it came from. That's where it came from.
Correct.
And the Norman Christie said, and I quote him, it was a stroke of brilliance on the part of the country and the government. Because it provided the incentive to invest. We kept our promise, invested, and then the benefit we were expecting in terms of write-off against immediate revenue, we could not take because there was no revenue. Madam Speaker, not one black cent or not one red cent was written off by any energy company as a result of these investments. And I challenge the Minister of Finance or anyone on that side to find it and show us that any energy company. You know, we spent years here listening and believing them. Budget 1, they told us the same thing. Budget 2, 3, 4, you know in 20 what? But the good news, you see, what happens in the dark comes to light one day. The sun will light it up. The sun will shine and light it up. And now it is very clear, not a cent was written off as a result of these incentives. Instead, what happened? We got increased gas production. Increased gas production. Increased gas productions because of these accelerated matters. Again, Prime Minister tells us in his broadcast, and again, we need to fact check whatever he says. Always remember that. I mentioned the Wendell Motley issue, but you know, I stood right here, and in one budget debate, Prime Minister stood up there and in 5 minutes lied 15 times. Tell untruths 15 times. So we have to fact check.
Okay, so member, so we're coming back to the broadcast, please.
So we have to fact check this. Price collapse, yes, the prices did fall. But again, if you look at the macro trends, it will be very interesting to see macro trend historical data about oil prices. In 2015, this is where the fall started under our watch. The price collapse. 48.72 average closing price of oil, 2015. Before that, in 2014, it was 93.17. And you see, again, this is where sometimes the broadcast, you use 2014. Sometimes you use 2015. Wherever it suits you, cherry pick that year and you use it. Our last full year in office was 2015. And we ran 2015 with an oil price of $48.72.
What? And do all of that?
In 2016, that price fell, yes, as Prime Minister said, to 43.58. By 2017, average closing price of oil was 50.84. And then you keep going up. 2018 projected 64.9. Minister of Finance may know how much has come in. And I think he did say they got more than expected in this first quarter of 2018 to 19. So the price fell, yes. But the interesting thing is that, you know, the government on that side, in their 3 years in office, they have spent more than we have spent in our first 3 years in office.
Oh, Lord.
They have spent more than we have spent. And whilst we could tell you where the money gone, we could show you, and as I say, you could touch, you could see the Cooper Hospital, you could see, I remember Mr. Manning, where the money gone? Yeah, the health centers, hospital, schools, laptops, you name it, it's there. But I would like to ask the government to stand up and tell us where the money gone. Where is the $166 billion that you have spent, and counting, that you have spent since you came into office? Tell us what you did with it. And don't tell me you are paying teachers, nurses, and doctors, because we did that too. We paid wages and salaries and pensions. We had we had that blue note you put there. We paid for all those things, and on top of that, we had all this development and infrastructural development in the country. When we come to NGC dividends, Madam Speaker, I don't know when they will ever stop telling this untruth about the NGC dividends. From their very first budget, we have responded repeatedly, and they continue. I don't know who is misleading the Prime Minister. I don't know which advisors are giving him wrong data about the dividends. The truth of the fact is, looking at the EITI reports and looking at the annual reports of the NGC, Remembering first, EITI does fiscal, and the NGC reports are annual. So part of 2015 would have fallen under their watch in the annual report. When we take all together, and Madam Speaker, one speaker here will take it and go through every single one. Far from the 14 and 16 billion they said in the two accounts, the dividends, that we rated 12 point whatever billion dollars. It was rated 16. Then they said 14. Yes, we in fact took 12.94. And you know what? That was over a 5-year period. But the way in which the two accounts were presented gave the impression, you put it next to the overdraft, you use the overdraft for 2015, but the NGC is 12 billion, well, they said 14, is over 5 years. How much did you take in the 3 years? How much did you take in the 3 years you've been here?
Tell them.
I told you already, schools, hospitals, laptops, and that seat you're sitting on in the parliament was paid for in our time when we this parliament building. This parliament, Madam Speaker, I know what's happening, distractions. So let me go. NGC dividend. Do you know that they took 493 million?
Your best friend.
Need some injury time.
Members, you know, I want to hear the member for Superior. Please, ma'am.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, these NGC dividends totally distorted untruth. This is again part of the mythomania. I spoke about mythomania. In just 4 months, 115 days in coming to the office, that government took $3.68 billion. Wow. Just 4 months. And you're muttering already on that side. Did you know that the numbers, which the Prime Minister did not tell us last week, Friday. Last week, he only told us what happened between 15 and 16 on question from Dr. Tewarie. He didn't tell us that within the first 10 days in office, still being in fiscal 15, but under their watch, that they took out $493 million in dividends on September 16, just within 10 days of office. So they have been misleading us with this all the time. As of December 2017, that government has taken $6.5 billion from NGC.
No shame.
That is
no shame.
So, in office 15 to 16, 16 to 17. 17 to 18, 6.5. And then you tell us we dump it in a yellow truck. We vacuum it in a yellow truck. Why that truck wasn't blue or green? It was done deliberately. It was done deliberately to demonize the UNC and to brand the UNC. But today, I want to ask the Honorable Prime Minister, the $166 billion you spent in the 3 years that you've dumped and vacuumed into a red truck, tell the country what you did. Tell the country. Tell the country. And then the second account in the two accounts was the overdraft.
Order,
and again,
order.
my colleagues will have the entire overdraft picture here. They told us from day one, budget one, remember, running on fumes, max out the, you know what they're doing? They are maxing and going above and beyond the statutory limits. I will pass the notes to share the numbers. In 2016-17, they took an overdraft of $7.0 billion. In 15-16, $8.8 billion of the overdraft. And when we did the variations last week, the Minister of Finance refused, neglected, did everything, but did not tell us what was the overdraft. I was here when I stopped to ask you the question, and to give way, and you said, no, I'm not giving way. Not giving way.
I remember.
And the Minister, even though in that report, Standing Finance, one of the pieces of things agreed to be shared was what was the quantum at the end of fiscal 2018. The Minister told us today it's 75%. It fluctuates, but at no point in time. And then he says this in the public domain. Well, yes, Minister, if you know where it is, you will tell us. But I know that in this Parliament, the Auditor General will lay her report, or his report, in April, and it will come to light. I am of a respectful view, and I asked the Minister to tell me that they have maxed out the overdraft. They're not, and remember, they increased the ceiling, eh? Yes. So it's more to tell us what was the overdraft at the end. So the Prime Minister uses these two accounts, the overdraft and NGC dividends. And then says, as I say, there's another $6 billion, which I'll be happy if you'll tell us where that came from. Because as far as I'm aware, the money in the exchequer account, consolidated fund, is a draft, overdraft, and you may have some others there, he could tell us. So $29 billion, he says, spent, dumped in this yellow garbage truck and gone. I again ask him, tell us where is your money. Then the Prime Minister muddled GDP numbers with expenditure. The Prime Minister in his broadcast, I can speak above them because I don't want to lose the time. The Prime Minister in his broadcast muddled expenditure and GDP growth and complained about in our time and showed the graph how high the GDP was. What GDP was. I'm proud of that. It means we are doing well. The country is doing well. We were growing. And then the Prime Minister commits a faux pas by giving numbers I don't know, which seem to have come out of hat as to the growth projections of saying that we could do a 2% growth on the economy. Look, the IMF talked about 2017, 18, 19. Nowhere in that is there any projected growth. Madam Speaker, I didn't have 2 hours, but I think I've dealt with enough to show that the government has given us wrong numbers. And I think their time is coming. Just like their friend across the Gulf, their days are numbered. So many individuals and organizations are tripping over themselves to join this UNC. Yes. Have you heard anyone wanting to unite with them? I attempted to expose deceptions. My colleagues will speak. I saw a news story today about a headline, anger in Palo Seco. And there is pain and suffering in this country everywhere under this government. And I'm reminded of the holy text in Isaiah, Madam Speaker, when the people were weeping and wailing and gnashing their teeth, and they were shouting, Lord, whom shall we send? Whom shall we send? Today I say, send us, my Lord. Send the UNC to rescue Trinidad and Tobago and to get TNT working again. And finally, for those who want to hear our plans and proposals, journey down to Cuba on Sunday for the National Assembly. And if you can't journey, tune in to Synergy, Jagriti, and the various radio stations. We shall be streaming live, live on Facebook. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, and I beg to
Well said.
Member for Orupuchis.
I beg to second the motion and reserve my right to speak later in the proceedings.
Honourable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House consider details of the two-part address by the Honourable Keith Rowley, MP, Prime Minister termed Mind Your Business Reporting to the Nation, that aired on January 6, 2019 and January 7, 2019. Member for the Gumati Northeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I notice our Portuguese is screaming already. I haven't even spoken and he's screaming. Madam Speaker, let me deal with a procedural matter immediately. I beg to move that the motion be amended by adding the following words immediately before the resolution. Whereas the present government inherited in September 2015 a very difficult and challenging financial situation as a result, Madam Speaker, come on, I beg your protection.
Please proceed. Please proceed, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me start from the beginning. I beg to move that the motion be amended by adding the following words immediately before the resolution. Whereas the present government inherited in September 2015 a very difficult and challenging financial situation as a result of the profligate and reckless spending of the previous government, and whereas in the face of these challenges, the present government has stabilized the economy, created an economic turnaround, and laid the foundation for sustainable economic growth, and whereas in the face of the current economic situation, there is a need to do more with less, and this is being achieved by the present government. Second. Oh, Camille was second.
Member Faruqa Maloney.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to second the amendment, and I reserve my right to speak.
Honourable members, I shall now propose the amendment moved by the member for Diego Martin North East and seconded by the member for Aruka Maloney. The question is that the motion be amended by adding the following words immediately before the resolution. Whereas the present government inherited in September 2015 a very difficult and challenging financial situation as a result of the profligate and reckless spending of the previous government. And whereas, in the face of these challenges, the present government has stabilized the economy, created an economic turnaround, and laid the foundation for sustainable economic growth. And whereas, in the face of the current economic situation, there is need to do more with less, and this is being achieved by the present government. Member for Diego Martin North East.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, why are they standing up? Why are you standing up? Why are you standing up? I have the floor.
Is there a point of order? Is
This-
there a
this-
point of
Madam,
order?
we need to know if this procedurally this needs to be put to the House for a vote, and because there's a change of the motion.
And a takeover of private standing order one. Madam Speaker, standing order one.
One?
Yes, standing order one.
One?
The rights of the individuals in the parliament.
Yes, the Constitution.
Madam Speaker, the reason why I have proposed this amendment is that the motion had no recitals. So the motion needed to be corrected by the inclusion of appropriate recitals to put the Prime Minister's report to the nation in context. Because all the motion asked this Parliament to do is to take note of the report to the nation. It doesn't ask for anything else. So to put that in context, one must indicate what were the circumstances that led to the report to the nation. And this is completely consistent with the standing orders. Go and learn the standing orders. Madam Speaker, let me just deal with some issues that the Leader of the Opposition raised. The Leader of the Opposition, Madam Speaker, I can't. All up and down, cacophony on that.
Member for Diego Martin North East, please proceed. Direct your contribution this week. Please proceed.
Try my best, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, anticipating that the member for Siparia would bring some fake statistics into this House. What standing order is that?
Honourable member.
What standing order is that?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Anticipating that the member for Siparia would bring inaccurate, erroneous, and false statistics into this House, I sought and obtained from the National Gas Company a record of payments made to the government of Trinidad and Tobago from 2010 to 2018, year by year. And I have done an addition, Madam Speaker, and in 2010, the total payments made by the NGC, 1.9 billion. In 2011, 5.6 billion. In 2012, 5.1 billion. In 2013, 7.5 billion. In 2014, 7.2 billion. And in 2015, $8.8 billion, Madam Speaker. A total of $36.1 billion, $36.1 billion paid by the NGC to the government between 2010 and 2015, Madam Speaker. I can't recall, Madam Speaker, what numbers the honourable member quoted, but it was a fraction of this. Might be just 10% of this. Let me put back onto the record the total payments made by the National Gas Company to the government between 2010 and 2015, $36.1 billion, Madam Speaker. 36.1. And made up as follows, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is hard. I know you tell me speak to you, but if Naparima, Siparia, etc. keep shouting, it's going to be difficult, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is broken down into dividends and taxes, and the total received $36.1 billion.
Published information.
An average of $7 billion a year. $7 billion a year, Madam Speaker, is what they received from the National Gas Corporation. $7 billion a year, all of which they burnt. They burnt, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also heard at the end of the member's contribution the fake allegation that I've heard from other members of the UNC, like persons who are on the periphery, like Vasant Bharat and Carolyn C. Persad-Bissessar and so on. They're on the periphery, and some who are inside the UNC right now, like Senator Hossain, on radio stations. What point of order? What point of order? Madam Speaker, they're going to keep doing this. Of course.
One member says inaccurate, one member says false. I see no difference in the respective words. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is just ridiculous. Madam Speaker, as I said, C. Persad-Bissessar, Saddam Hussein, and Vasant Bharat have been at pains to go and spread misinformation on the radio stations, in the newspapers, on the television, and on social media, Madam Speaker. The leader of the opposition repeated the misinformation that is out there spread by these people who know better and know that what they're saying is not true. I have in my hand the review of the economy, a public document laid in this parliament. Pardon? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I'm not displaying it. I'm just saying I have in my hand the review of the economy 2018 laid in this parliament as a budget document in 2018 October, Madam Speaker, when the 2019 budget was presented. On page 100, Madam Speaker, there's Appendix 21. Now, Madam Speaker, if you go back into the reviews of the economy, 2017, 16, 15, 14, 13, 11, 12, go all the way back, you will see an appendix in these documents that is entitled Central Government Revenue. And on page 100 of the review of the economy, which every member on that side has a copy of, especially the member for Siparia, because the member for Siparia made the response to the budget in October 2018. On page 100, it states as follows, Appendix 21. Taxes on incomes and profits. Madam Speaker, I know you tell me to talk to you, but it's a constant shouting over there.
Okay, honorable members, I understand that the member for Diego Martin notice, generally creates some excitement when he speaks, but I'd ask members to please comply with Standing Order 53. Please
Thank
continue.
you, Madam Speaker. On page 100 of the Review of the Economy 2018, Appendix 21, none of the figures in here were challenged by members opposite during the budget debate. Not one. They agreed with these figures. And on page 100, it states taxes on incomes and profit, companies, please be quiet, oil companies. Madam Speaker, come on. This is ridiculous.
Members, we understand how we make interruptions, and therefore any member who wishes to make an interruption will do it in the proper way. Other than that, I'd ask members, please, they would have an opportunity to contribute to this debate in the right time. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will ask for injury time. taxes on incomes and profits, oil companies. In the year 2014, the taxes from oil companies, $16.969 billion, Madam Speaker, which can easily be rounded off to $17 billion. So the taxes received on incomes and profits from oil companies in the year 2014 was $17 billion, 16.969. And in the year 2016, fiscal 2016, using the same line in the same appendix on the same page in the same document, taxes on incomes and profits from oil companies, $1.036 billion. So this is a published document, Madam Speaker. So in 2014, under the previous government, they received $17 billion in taxes from oil companies, and in 2016, this government received $1 billion from oil companies. A drop of $16 billion, Madam Speaker. And if I go to the presentation made by the Honorable Prime Minister, which is the subject of this debate, and I go to the particular slide where the Honorable Prime Minister pointed out what the situation was, it says energy tax revenue. Only a illiterate school child would not understand the meaning of these letters. TAX. It says energy tax revenue. And this is the slide which says, Madam Speaker, in this presentation from the Prime Minister, on the slide that deals with what happened to energy tax revenue, the word tax is clearly stated, Madam Speaker. It is stated at the top, it is stated at the bottom. And the Prime Minister said that tax revenue from the energy sector dropped from 17 billion to 1 billion. And I have just shown the source document. It's also in the estimates of revenue, another budget document that we lay in this House. So it is a fact that tax from oil companies dropped from 17 billion to $1 billion from 2014 to 2016. That is a fact. Undisputed fact. And members opposite and their friends keep going out there making mischief with these numbers. These numbers are exact numbers, Madam Speaker. So let's debunk that mischief once and for all. And what they've done, Madam Speaker, they are so mischievous that what they do is they use the total revenue from the energy sector, which is royalties, taxes, levy, business, petroleum levy, business levy, green fund, petroleum impost, a whole range of revenue streams. That is the one they refer to. And they mislead the population by pretending that the Prime Minister did not refer to taxes. And when you go to that, the situation is even worse. And in fact, in retrospect, it might have been more illustrative if total revenue had been used. That is on page 99. So you go to Appendix 20 of Central Government Fiscal Operations, go to page 99 of the Review in the Economy, Madam Speaker, and what you will see is that in fiscal 2014, total revenue from energy sector from all sources, 28.06 billion, Madam Speaker. 28.06 billion. And then when you go to 2016, total revenue from all sources, $8.2 billion, Madam Speaker. The fall in revenue from all sources in the energy sector between 2014 and 2016 was in fact $20 billion. More than the fall in tax revenue from oil companies, Madam Speaker. So it's even worse. But what honorable members opposite have been doing is that they take the $8 billion figure, which is an aggregate of all revenue from the energy sector of any kind, and they compare it to the tax revenue from oil companies. So they take the 8 and they compare it to the 17 in order to pretend that the Honorable Prime Minister got his numbers wrong. But what they should be doing, and they know very well, that they should look at 8 billion from the energy sector in 2016 and 28 billion in 2014. They know that. And they know very well the Prime Minister was talking about tax revenue. So let's debunk that once and for all. No, let us move on, Madam Speaker. Let us move on.
We're going to check the immigration status.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member quoted a number of personalities who are in opposition to the government, who are in opposition to the government, Madam Speaker, and had the audacity to say that these are neutral, independent Ralph Maraj. Come on, give me a break, Madam Speaker. Give me a break. Give me a break. Denise Deming, Michael Harris. Give me a break, Madam Speaker.
What's wrong with her? She's lying with Chrislyn. That's my misogynistic. You can spell that?
Madam Speaker, I have gone through the contribution of the Honourable Member for Siparia. Apart from a tirade about Venezuela, Madam Speaker, it's very difficult to find anything of substance said by the member with respect to the Prime Minister's report. But what I could say is that they're obviously very upset about the yellow garbage truck. That's bothering them. They're bothering the visuals in the report, which showed $29 billion sucked out of the central bank and the NGC and so on, and put into a yellow garbage truck. That is obviously bothering them very much. And one of the things that the opposition leader said is that $29 billion was not siphoned into some truck. We spend it on hospitals and schools. And Madam Speaker, it's about time that we need to debunk that too. One of the first challenges we had as a government when we came in is we found the Point Fortin Hospital under construction. We found the Arima Hospital under construction with no source of funds, Madam Speaker. No source of funds.
They have no children's hospital.
Not paid for. All we received as a gift from the Honourable Member for Siparia was unpaid bills. I heard the member talk about they gifted us $112 billion. That is absolute nonsense, Madam Speaker. What they gifted us was unpaid bills for 2 hospitals, which had only just begun, in the amount of $3 billion, Madam Speaker. When you take the Point Fortin Hospital at over $1 billion and the Arima Hospital at almost $2 billion, and you add that together, Madam Speaker, we had to immediately go and find financing in the sum of $3 billion to finance those hospitals, which they have not built. It is this administration that is going to complete those hospitals. They didn't build them. They didn't build them. The Point Fortin Hospital barely scratched the ground, Madam Speaker. Similarly with the Arima Hospital. All they did, they had a groundbreaking ceremony. They dig a little hole in Point Fortin, they dig another little hole in Arima.
Honourable members, the consistent crosstalk and shouting across the room is not at all permissible for the chamber. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All they did was take a backhoe and dig a little hole in Point Fortin and say that is a hospital. And then take the same backhoe and drive up to Arima and dig a hole again and say that is a hospital. And then we came in and we have to complete the construction. We had to get a framework agreement signed with Madam Speaker.
Member for Bhoendradatt and I'm certain, member for Bhoendradatt, I am certain you will get the opportunity to express your views in a way that is conducive and at the time. I am sure you can. Member for Diego Martin.
Yes, Madam Speaker, it's an undisputed fact that they awarded contracts for the Point Fortin Hospital and Arima Hospital, and we were forced to find the money for them and manage the projects to completion, Madam Speaker. Those are undisputed facts. We're still doing that. We're still doing that. I also heard in a flight of fantasy, Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition say that they left us with $112 billion in cash. Absolute nonsense. And I've heard this before. And I'm very worried, Madam Speaker, about the level of education in this country. I'm very worried about it. because both of the people who keep saying that falsehood went to our local university. Both of them, they keep uttering that falsehood. Madam Speaker, our foreign reserves are not cash belonging to the government. Any first-year student in economics will understand that. Our foreign reserves are not cash. They are simply foreign currency. If we want to access the foreign reserves, we have to buy them from the central bank. The foreign reserves do not belong to the government, Madam Speaker. It is not cash. It is simply currency. It is simply currency, Madam Speaker, that we have to purchase. The government has to purchase these foreign reserves if it wants to utilize them, Madam Speaker. It's a complete myth. When the central bank puts foreign reserves into the economy, into the banking system, when the central bank will inject maybe $1 billion US, 1.5 billion US per year, that is bought by the commercial banking sector. The government receives no revenue when the central bank converts US dollars into TT dollars and distributes it to the commercial banking sector. It's a complete fallacy. It is a total fantasy that the foreign reserves are cash that is available to the government. And any first-year economics student will know that. But they keep adding the foreign reserves to the HSF to come up with an imaginary figure. It's embarrassing, and I'm worried about the level of education in this country, Madam Speaker. Embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia said that the tax concessions they gave to the oil companies were declared by one of the CEOs of one of the multinational oil companies to be brilliant. That is what the honorable member said, that the tax concessions where they gave away our country's revenue to the multinationals during their period, they said that one of the CEOs said that was a brilliant move. And then 2 minutes later into her address, contradicted herself and said they would never use them. So if they were never used, how could they be brilliant? And if they were never used, how could they result in increased gas production?
Which did not happen.
Madam, it is circular, fallacious argument, Madam Speaker. If these concessions were so brilliant, how come they didn't use them? And how come they didn't result in increased gas production, Madam Speaker?
No
Madam
profits
Speaker,
and the price was low.
What we found when we came into government, Madam Speaker, is that the former government had given generous tax breaks to the multinational oil companies. And that is in no small measure responsible for the loss in revenue from taxation on oil companies from $17 billion to $1 billion. From $17 billion in 2014 to $1 billion in 2016. They could jump high and they could jump low, they could say what they want. The fact of the matter is, they gave it away, Madam Speaker. They had no interest in protecting the patrimony of this country. They had no interest in protecting the revenue stream. They were just giving it away to friends in the sector, Madam Speaker. Yes, giving it away to your friends. And that is why your friends would say it was a brilliant move. What are you on about now?
Yeah, they have no friends.
No.
What are you on about?
Minister of Finance, I'll ask you to rephrase that, please.
I'm not sure what to say, Madam Speaker. All I will say is that they gave away generous tax concessions to the oil companies, resulting in a loss of revenue for the taxpayers of this country, for the poor people of this country were cheated out of billions of dollars because of these tax concessions. You could put it any way you want. You could put it any way you want. Madam Speaker, when you look at the spotlight on energy, and you see what occurred in other countries over the 2010 to 2015 period, in terms of the revenue flowing to other countries who are in a similar position to Trinidad and Tobago. When you take other petroleum economies, Madam Speaker, and look at what happened in those countries in the 2010 to 2015 period, those other petroleum exporting countries, they received billions and billions of dollars in tax revenue, Madam Speaker, while we got nothing. They did not give away the shop in those other countries. It is the administration of the member for Siparia that caused energy taxation to drop from $17 billion to $1 billion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I can't say anything about the bulk of the member's speech about Venezuela, Madam Speaker. It was totally irrelevant, and I want no part of that conversation with the member for Siparia. Trying to completely twist the purpose of this debate, which is all about the Prime Minister's report to the nation. And in the Prime Minister's report to the nation, Madam Speaker, in the Prime Minister's report to the nation, one of the points that the Prime Minister made is that when you compare what is happening in other countries, Madam Speaker, in terms of revenue from the petroleum sector, Madam Speaker, when you look at what is happening, you would see that you take a similar country to Trinidad and Tobago, receiving, and the example being used is Nigeria, and in Nigeria, Madam Speaker, the gross revenue from the energy sector, $6.8 billion US, and taxes paid to the government of Nigeria, $3.6 billion US dollars, so that in Nigeria, because they have a proper tax regime, not a giveaway tax regime like the one created by the members opposite, the gross revenue from sale of energy products, $6.8 billion, taxes paid to the government, $3.6 billion. So the Nigerian people received 53% of revenue from the oil sector. In the same period, the gross revenue to an oil company in Trinidad and Tobago, $5.3 billion US dollars, and the taxes paid because of the giveaways of the other side, 31 million, 0.6% of revenue. So these are the undisputed facts, Madam Speaker. These are undisputed, that in another country, they got over 50% of the oil revenue coming to the people and taxpayers of that country. But because of the reckless behavior of the other side, we only got less than 1%, Madam Speaker. And we are reversing that. We are reversing that, Madam Speaker. We have increased gas production by 20%. We have reversed all of the errors of the UNC. All of the mistakes have been corrected. We now have gas production up to 3.8 billion standard cubic feet. They caused gas production to plummet to 3 billion standard cubic feet a day. We have it up to 3.8 billion standard cubic feet a day. We have increased gas production. We have increased gas production by 25%, Madam Speaker. 25% in just 3 years. We have increased gas production. Madam
Member for Barataria San Juan, you undertook to give me, you undertook to please. Member for Caroni Central, I'm sure you're going to also join the debate, so I'll ask you to wait your turn. Member for Naparima, I'm sure you will join too if you wish. I'll ask you to wait your turn. Member for Diego Martino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's interesting that the other side is complaining that the reason for the increase in gas production is the incentives and concessions that they didn't use. The member for Siparia.
She says she challenged anyone.
Your original 30 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes to wind up your contribution if you wish.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will take the 15. The member for Siparia attempted to explain why they gave away the country by saying that the tax concessions they gave to the oil companies were not used. Not a cent was used by the oil companies. But when I point out, Madam Speaker, that other countries get up to 50% of revenue coming back to the people and taxpayers of that country, whereas Trinidad, because of them, only gets 1%, the shout out, the gas production went up because of the incentives, and then the other one says they didn't use the incentives. How does one reconcile this nonsense, Madam Speaker? If the incentives were not used, if not 1 cent of the tax concessions were utilized, then how on earth could these same incentives be the cause of the increase in gas production by 25%, Madam Speaker? The fact of the matter is, the Prime Minister took the bull by the horns. The Minister and the Minister of the Prime Minister took a very active role together with the Minister of Energy, had direct face-to-face contact and meetings with the oil companies, both here and overseas, Madam Speaker. And based on that kind of negotiation, that kind of professionalism, that kind of committed direct contact with the oil companies, we were able to negotiate a situation where gas production has increased by 25%, Madam Speaker. It is all thanks to the People's National Movement government and the people that I just mentioned, Madam Speaker. So we have gas production up by 25%, Madam Speaker. 25%. 25%. And it is clear to me that the members opposite have no facts. They have no facts at all. All they could say is the number's wrong. I've already pointed out that the number that they're hanging on to, that is a falsity on their part. The question of, yes, the question of the revenue from the oil companies, I've already pointed out that their assertions are false. I've already pointed that out using source data, Madam Speaker. The other fallacy, Madam Speaker, is that what they gifted us was $5 billion in back pay. That we had the unions coming at us immediately. We come into government in September, and in September, the unions are coming at us for that $5 billion back pay, which they committed but didn't pay. $5 billion in back pay, Madam Speaker. Short-term loans. They took a loan. They took a loan for TNTech a couple days before the general election, Madam Speaker. $1.6 billion. And that $1.6 billion matured in February of 26. You could imagine. We now come into government. They clean out the treasury. They had $6 billion in credit in the treasury when they came in. They wipe it out. They had the overdraft. There was no overdraft. It was the government's account was in credit. They take it from $6 billion plus to $9 billion minus. So we come in there. They've blown $15 billion in reserves at the central bank. And then we find out that they've taken a whole series of short-term loans, some of them maturing in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, at 1 year, and so on, Madam Speaker. They hit us with that. We had to go and refinance $4 billion in short-term loans taken out just before the general election, Madam Speaker. In the first year, we had to go and find $4 billion to refinance loans that they took out for electioneering purposes just before the general election. And you add that $4 billion, they cleaned out the $15 billion in the central bank. I've just indicated they sucked out $36 billion from the National Gas Company in their 5-year period, Madam Speaker. We had to face all of this, Madam Speaker. That is a gift they gave to us. That is a gift they presented to the government, Madam Speaker. This wonderful gift. I will continue to repeat this story, that within a couple days of being appointed Minister of Finance, the then governor of the central bank came to see me. And he said, if you don't put funds into the government account within the next 2 days, I'm going to turn off the tap. Those were his words. I'm going to turn off the tap. So I asked the then governor, what do you mean by turn off the tap? And he said, the overdraft limit is somewhere in the vicinity at that time of about $8.9 billion, and you are now overdrawn by $8.8 billion, Madam Speaker. That is what is facing us. They had taken the overdraft limit up to almost 100% of the limit just before the general election. They were spending money on election morning. This is what we have discovered. They were signing leases and getting away things on the morning of September 7, 2015, Madam Speaker. So they burn up $15 billion in cash at the central bank. They suck out $36 billion from the NGC. Then I am told as I come in, you only have a couple days left. You only have a couple days left to run this country. $5 billion in back pay coming at us. And then all the checks that they wrote in September, you see, they like to pretend, They like to pretend that the government has no expenditure. No expenditure. So in September 2015 was one of the worst months for expenditure in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. They write billions of dollars in checks before the general election. These checks are now being presented in September 2015 and October 2015 to be encashed, Madam Speaker. Billions of dollars. And the financial year, it was ending at the end of September 30th, Madam Speaker. Billions and billions of dollars in checks written just before the general election to contractors and so on, being presented to me as Minister of Finance in September 2015, a couple of days after the general election. That is what we were faced with. That is the gift that they gave to us. And it kept coming up every month. It kept coming up. Another short-term loan suddenly maturing. There was a particular loan that they took out in their previous incarnation in the year 2000. They took out a loan and in the loan they put a condition that if Trinidad and Tobago is downgraded, you would have to pay $100 million in 14 days. That is how they run this country, under the administration of which the member for Separio was then the Attorney General or Minister of Education or whatever the honourable member was. They took out a loan with a clause in it that if Trinidad and Tobago is downgraded, you have to pay back $100 million in 14 days. And under them, we were downgraded 3 times, Madam Speaker. Under them, we were downgraded. And then they ducked the IMF, they ducked S&P, they ducked Moody's during the election year. They wouldn't meet with them because they didn't want to get a proper report coming out of S&P and Moody's and IMF in the election year because they knew what it would contain. If you look at the Standard & Poor's credit rating report of 2015, they make copious reference to the profligate behavior and reckless election spending of the UNC. And that is why they downgraded Trinidad and Tobago in 2015, because of that election madness that took place under the member for Siparia in 2015, Madam Speaker. And the whole point is, Madam Speaker, this is what they gifted to us, not their fantasy. The member for Caroni, what is he? Central, from time to time say, look, all the money we leave for you, we leave you dividends from TGU, we leave you loan. Loan? It's $15 billion in expenditure that we had in that first 6 weeks, Madam Speaker. $15 billion we had to find. Where the money gone? I want to know where the money gone. The money went paying your bad debts that you took out before the general election. That's where the money went. That's where it went. And it is just incredible. The whole country knows how they blow the overdraft in the central bank. The whole country knows how much money they suck out of NGC and put in that yellow garbage truck. The whole country knows that. The whole country knows about the $5 billion in back pay that we were gifted with by the members opposite. The whole country knows about the steep trajectory in our public debt under them. They borrowed and borrowed and borrowed until they reached the debt ceiling, Madam Speaker. They borrowed so much, they hit the debt ceiling, they couldn't borrow anymore. So you know what they did, Madam Speaker? They went and they borrowed through the state enterprises. So it wouldn't appear on the books, Madam Speaker. They went and borrowed $400 million for EMBD and pay out that a couple of days before the general election, $600 million in sports company, Madam Speaker. It would take me hours to explain the kind of things these people did. They reach the debt ceiling, they burn up all the cash in the central bank, they take it and they just put it into this truck and just spew it out into questionable projects like the Beetham wastewater project, which we now hear. They wasted over $1 billion in cash of taxpayers' money in that Beetham wastewater project, Madam Speaker, in the election year. That election year of 2015, that election season, is one of the most damaging periods in this country's history, Madam Speaker. How much more time I have? Right, one of the most damaging periods. One of the most damaging periods. And they think that we are not going to talk about that. Well, we will talk about that until the general election of 2020. And if you get us vexed, we will talk about it after the general election of 2020. The country needs to know about the reckless, profligate, irrational, wild spending of the UNC. The country needs to know how they bankrupted the Treasury. Because it affects us now, Madam Speaker. The country needs to know, and we will say it over and over and over. Over and over and over and over. Madam Speaker, it is a credit to this administration. It is a credit to this administration that having been gifted that mess that they gifted us, that we were able to engage in fiscal consolidation. We were able to cut out waste, squandermania, and corruption. In one of these slides, Madam Speaker, in one of these slides, the Prime Minister refers to just a few projects, Madam Speaker. Look at the projects he referred to. The Kamuto Highway, because it was tendered properly, saved $150 million. The Curragh flyover, because it was tendered properly, saved $200 million. The Red House, cost reduced by $400 million, Madam Speaker. Just 4 projects the Prime Minister cited, savings by eliminating corruption. By eliminating corruption, the PNM administration was able to save over $1 billion on just 4 projects, Madam Speaker. It is a credit to this administration that having been gifted that mess that we have recovered, we have stabilized the economy, we have turned the economy around, and now for the first time in quite some time, the people of this country have hope. They see hope in the PNM. They see progress in the PNM administration. They see that we know what we are doing, and I give credit to the Prime Minister for his report, because it's the first time that a Prime Minister has done this kind of presentation. And Madam Speaker, they could say what they want. All of my constituents, all 28,000 of them are telling me how much they appreciated the openness and the transparency of the Honourable Prime Minister's report. I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Okay, honourable members, I just want to remind all members that from here on, members can speak on both the original motion and the proposed amendment. Member for Caroni Central.
Yes. At least let's get a sense of
Madam Speaker, before I proceed, I just want to read on page 26 of the standing orders under Amendments 42. If a member wishes to vary the terms of a motion standing in his name, he may do so by giving an amended notice of motion, provided that such amendment does not, in the opinion of the Speaker, materially alter any principle embodied in the original motion or the scope thereof. Such amended notice of motion shall run from the time at which the original notice of the motion was given. I just want to say, Madam Speaker, that in my view, what we have here is a completely altered intent of a motion brought by the leader of the opposition, in which she simply asked that the House take note of the presentation by the Prime Minister, which was a public presentation once it became nationally televised to the nation at large. And the reason she brought this motion is that we, on the opposition side, were willing to look at everything the Prime Minister said, both in text and in the presentation that he made, the PowerPoint, and examine the matters that he spoke to the nation about, so that we can bring some reason to the political presentation that was made on January 6th and 7th, I believe, to the public by television. Instead, what we have here is that the Prime Minister will not defend himself. Secondly, he sends forth
the member for Diego Martin Northeast to basically hijack the motion, which is what he has done. He spends a significant amount of time, 10 or 12 minutes, trying to pacify a quarrel between himself and the Prime Minister about the numbers. And then he proceeds as a virtual prevaricator at large to present a most vapid, repetitive contribution. Because the whole intent of his amendment, Madam Speaker, was to take the debate to where they are comfortable, which is what?
To blame.
Blame Kamla. Blame the UNC.
Blame the people.
Blame the People's Partnership government. Because 3.5 years later, after a wealth of promises, after saying they were ready, after talk for 4 budgets now, what we have in this country is a government of absolute and total non-performance, with nothing gained, thousands of people suffering because of their policies, and the end result is that we have the Minister of Finance coming here and behaving like Maduro himself. So I want to start with a quotation from his minister, from the Minister of Energy of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Somewhere around 2009, 2010, this is the Minister of Energy from Hansard. This Minister of Energy, he made a statement in 2017. Somewhere around 2009, 2010, we, meaning the continuing government of the PNM, this time under previous Prime Minister Patrick Manning, dropped the ball because upstream investment did not match the rate of production. It is what we call in the E&P business walking up the down escalator, because the escalator is coming down and you are trying to walk down, so you have to make investment just to stay where you are. That is what natural decline does to you.
Madam Speaker, point of order, 48-1. Sit down. This has nothing to do with anything said by the Minister of Energy.
I believe the member referred to Standing Order 48-1. Member for Caroni Central, I'll give you a very short opportunity to tie in what you're talking about to what is the subject of the debate. And the subject to the debate is a resolution on the Prime Minister's two-day presentation.
Madam Speaker, the Minister spent his time talking about energy.
A very short opportunity to tie it in. Either you use that time or you spend the time fighting with me. Please continue.
I'll tie in everything. I'll tie in everything, Madam Speaker. So you have to make investment just to stay where you are. That is what natural decline does to you. Wells decline naturally, and you just have to keep investing to find new reserves of oil and gas to keep your production stable. Otherwise, it will decline until it reaches the floor. Upstream investment dried up in 2009, 2010. That is why the incentives that we provided were necessary, because they sat down for almost a decade, the last government, and there was no additional drilling in Trinidad and Tobago, which is what prompted the President Norman Christie of BPTT to say, which the leader of the opposition mentioned, and I quote the same quote that she used, "The truth is, without the incentives that were provided, the investments would not have been made." That being said, at the time of the investment, there was an expectation that prices were going to be a lot higher than they ended up being. So in a way, the country benefited because the allowance could not be used by the companies when the price of oil came down. What he is saying here, Madam Speaker, is that they got the incentives and they proceeded to drill immediately, having been in a drilling hiatus for close to 8 years in Trinidad and Tobago. And as they were doing that, hoping to benefit from the write-offs because of the increasing price of oil, 2014 came, January 2015 came. The end result is that they had no profit. They had nothing to write off. They had nothing to write off, and that is why the leader of the opposition mentioned what he said about the brilliance. So he went on to add, so you could say it was a stroke of brilliance on the part of the country and the government because it provided the incentive we needed to invest. But we kept our promise and invested. But then the benefit we were expecting in terms of a write-off against immediate revenue, we could not take because there was no revenue. So now, Madam Speaker, through you, I want to speak to the population at large. Because this is a habitual behavior of this Minister of Finance. He has no respect whatsoever for the truth. Lord. The last occasion he came and quoted from Mein Kampf about the big lie. And he then proceeded theoretically to expound. And in essence, was basically making the point that I was telling untruths in this parliament. I will never have cause to say an untruth to the people of Trinidad.
Standing Order 48.1, I did not say anything about the member for Caroni Central with respect to that matter in my contribution.
I'm sure.
Not a word.
Okay, so member for Caroni Central, I take it that that is the backdrop for the point you're going to make now. So please, let's stick with this debate. Proceed.
I just wanted to share that with the general public so that they know that behind all the bluster, there is pure prevarication and fluff. You know, in 1969, Madam Speaker, there was a fellow called Lawrence Peter, and he wrote a book called The Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle was meant to be a satire, really, about how people move up in the system. And then eventually they reach to a point where they become not so incompetent, really, at the new level. What was intended to be a satire became an obvious truth because in all organizations, people recognized that that in fact happened. People kept moving up the organizations and they reached a point of incompetence. And I want to say that there is no greater manifestation of government incompetence on the Peter Principle than in Trinidad and Tobago with the Rowley government in Trinidad.
What was this?
This is a country with several challenges. We have many problems that we've got to deal with in this country. And what we have is basically, we have seen in this country everything disappearing and going. We have nothing to show or to celebrate in 3.5 years close to 4 years now of this government. I think you would remember that we had a company called ArcelorMittal here. That is now gone, Madam Speaker. I think you know that we had a company called Petrotrin, which has now been remade into different manifestations of new companies. But in all of that, the refinery is now gone. I think you know that there was a project called Sandals mentioned in the Prime Minister's document here. That is now gone. That is not mentioned. I'll tell you the page.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I'll tell you the page. Sandals is on page 26. It's right there on page 26. Okay? And that is now gone. And now we have a situation in which the Venezuelan gas pipeline is now gone. 2016 is gone, 2017 is gone, 2018 is gone, 2019 is going. And no one can identify any positive destination ahead for this country. Foreign exchange is going, investment is going. The leader of the opposition talked about that. Graduates with education and skills are going. Economic Advisory Board gone. Council for Competitiveness and Innovation gone. Ease of doing business going. Jobs gone and going every day. Credibility of the government of Trinidad and Tobago gone. International reputation of Trinidad and Tobago going, and going fast. What, Madam Speaker, is the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the members on the other side, the Prime Minister and the members of the government, what are they going to leave us with when they finish with Trinidad and Tobago? How many years will it take to rescue this country when they are finished with it? I think that is the question we should be asking. I don't think we should be asking the question that the member for Diego Martin Northeast is asking. Because what the people did on September the 7th, 2015, was to give them the opportunity to show their motion as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. They have had 3.5 years now. Now, we had the presentation of the Prime Minister, and in that presentation, he made reference to a number of things. And basically, he said 4 things that the Minister of Finance dealt with here today in his particular presentation. He talked about the NGC and what happened with the NGC. He talked about the $29 billion, which he said basically was squandered, wasted by the government at the time, that's to say the People's Partnership government. He talked about the debt in the election year, which was short-term debt, which were increased, which were refinanced as debt, longer-term debt by their government. And those are some of the issues that he mentioned here. But he didn't mention that on the 16th of September 2015, the Minister of Finance took $493 million from NGC. That on the 29th of October 2015, together with the IPO proceeds, he got $1,514,000,000. He did not mention that on the 27th of November 2015, he got a 175 million. That on the 27th of November 2015, he got another 500 million. That on the 11th of December 2015, he got 501 million. And that on the 29th of December 2015, 501 million, which total 3.684 billion of funds taken by the Minister of Finance between September and December of that single year that they were talking about. Now, the Prime Minister talked about the $29 billion that was wasted, and he seemed to suggest that it was stolen, and that if the government had $29 billion, they would do this with it and that with it and so on. He talked about the central bank overdraft. He talked about all of these issues. And the Minister of Finance came here today again to reinforce those issues. I want to mention a few things here. He tried to compare Nigeria and Trinidad and Tobago. It is not the same thing. You don't even know how much oil you are talking about in the case of Nigeria. You can't just draw a piece of thing and without knowing what the foundation is, what the numbers are. Revenue is not revenue. Revenue is not revenue in that sense. You can't just say revenue here, things that do not compare, like mangoes and oranges. You know, I mean, really. And, you know, the central bank overdraft, he's talking about it now. On the last occasion, I asked the Minister of Finance, up to now he has not answered what is the current overdraft for this government of Trinidad and Tobago. He has not mentioned that to this House. He has not come and given the information what it is. He answers no questions. He comes here to accuse. He comes to chastise. He answers no questions. So the issue of accountability remains a big issue for this government. The issue of transparency remains an issue for this government. And I looked at this document. I just want to mention a couple of things here from the document, that's to say the Prime Minister's presentation, which raise some issues really about what is going to happen to this country. You know, so on the issue, I wonder if I can find it here now. I can't find it here now, Madam Speaker. I'll get back to it. And the reason I can't find it, but I know it's there because I did the calculation, and when I used the calculation for the housing, based on the Prime Minister's own numbers here, it would turn out to be $2 million for a single house. And that is one of the things I wanted to question, you see, because he kept talking about these numbers just like that, 1 million here and 1 million there and 1 million, and when, sorry, 1 billion here, 1 billion there. And when I say, well, let me check this, I simply do a rough calculation, it turned out to be $2 million a house. And that could not be right. Something has to be wrong. I think it was 300 houses he mentioned, and then he had the number. And so it is with this entire presentation in which there are a lot of holes, a lot of political propaganda, a lot of misinformation by the way that the manner is the information is presented. So I want to underscore this issue. If we did not give incentives, we would have no gas today, none of the juniper, all the energy growth that he's talking about. They did nothing for growth in this country. They inherit that from the last government. Every other sector in this country is in decline. I give him the numbers today. He said he had it. You know what he did? What he does? He comes here, he comes with the review of the economy. The review of the economy is put here in September 2018. And it covers the numbers for 2017. Okay? So he brings the review of the economy for 2018 in September. It covers the numbers for 2017. The second thing that they do in that review of the economy, which is dissected in the monetary report of November 2018, is that they took all the petrochemical manufacturing institutions in this country that are producing revenue, and they put it in the manufacturing sector. All right? So the end result is that the numbers have really given a false impression of what is happening in the economy. But when you come, and that, Madam Speaker, I want to emphasize is based on 2017 numbers. When you come to the November monetary report, what happens there is that you are going to June of 2018. So the numbers, and the governor of the central bank, careful not to contradict his minister, but knowing that he must be an independent being as governor of the central bank, he takes the information and he dissects it in such a way that you distinguish between the real manufacturing sector and the energy resources that are adding to growth in the energy sector. So I want to say something here which is important. Now, the government has been harping on the collapse of revenue from the energy sector from 2015 to 16. The Prime Minister used energy taxes only to make his point when he addressed the nation. Why did he not use overall energy revenue? The EITI report for 2016 says energy revenue in 2015 was 21 billion, and in 2016 it was 8.86 billion, Madam Speaker. That is a far cry from $1 billion. And this is a fall of 58%. Okay? But it's just that the Prime Minister was playing politics, and it was more politic for him to talk about energy taxes. Now, what was the main reason for the fall in revenue in 2015 and 16? It was the fall in oil prices, the fall in natural gas prices, the fall in methanol prices, in ammonia prices. That was not something isolated to TT. It was happening in every country, every energy country in the world. And as I said, the accelerated capital allowances, and I'm reinforcing the point made by the leader of the opposition, although they existed and they proved to be good incentives, they were not used by the oil companies. Now, the Minister of Finance, he knows this very well, you know. Everything that I'm saying here, he knows. He knows the issue about the review of the economy and what it represents. He knows the issue of the manufacturing sector and incorporating the energy sector, manufacturing, and what that means. He knows the difference between the monetary report and the review of the economy. So whenever he comes here and he distorts the information, it is absolutely and totally deliberate. Yes, he's absolutely deliberate. You know, and I want to say, you know, when the leader of the opposition was speaking, she was talking about the things we delivered, and they were touting, well, what did you deliver? I'll just mention a few things we delivered. We delivered the Diego Martin Highway. We delivered the state-of-the-art health facility in Karanaj. We delivered the boardwalk for public enjoyment in Chagaramas, deteriorating now. You going to talk to me about that and corruption?
Don't be distracted, member. Don't be distracted.
Yes. The Five Islands entertainment facility, which people are using now, private sector investment. The scores of projects in East Port of Spain, small projects. The Cuva Hospital. The sporting complex next to Atto Boldon Stadium. Courts put up their regional headquarters in central Trinidad, private investment. Unicoma. C3 Mall facility with Movie Town complex in South Trinidad. The Mitsubishi project in La Brea, which is going to come on stream in this particular year, Madam Speaker. We created 56,000 jobs in this country. All of them have flitted away now.
We lost the work.
And I asked them, what have you done? What have you produced? How have the people of Trinidad and Tobago benefited? And all of the projects over which they have presided have been mired by lack of transparency and lack of enlightened governance practices. In the ArcelorMittal project, yes, it was a private sector company, but they tried to meet with the government.
And the minister.
Honourable Member for Caroni Central, your original 30 minutes is now expired. You are entitled to 15 minutes to complete your presentation, but it is 4:27. So that I want to ask if now is a convenient time for us to take the suspension, or would you like to take your 2 minutes and then take your 13?
We can break now.
Okay, so honourable members, this House will now be suspended for 30 minutes. We shall resume at 5 o'clock.
Yes.